From UDO in partnership with TSN, welcome to episode 43 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. We're going to do this differently. So we're throwing out a normal, somewhat unusual podcast. No guests today, just because of all the news that's happening around the National Hockey League. Obviously, I have to respond to the Tampa Bay Lightning as Stanley Cup champions. But we're likely going to provide episode 44 and 45 for that matter with the developments in the news of the week as we hit into an incredibly busy period with the NHL draft looming as we record this on Friday, October 2nd. And then that takes you into restricted free agency with qualifying period on Wednesday, the deadline there, and unrestricted free agency on Friday. Pleased to be joined as always, with my partner, Ray Ferraro, who's, we haven't talked to you, Ray. We haven't had an update since you had knee replacement surgery just over a week ago. You look good. Are you feeling good? How are things?
I'm feeling better for sure. The first few days were pretty rough. Yeah. And it was, it's pretty sore. I mean, it's a big surgery, but I can't believe what the doctors told me was going to happen as quickly as it has happened. Like, I can walk. I mean, I've got to be careful, but like, I can put full weight on my leg. I mean, I've got a part in there. I don't have a knee anymore. And like, it works. And it's like, it's crazy stuff. I got to tell you, my wife, Cammie, like, for anyone that's been around somebody that's had surgery or, has had an illness, the people that look after the people that are sick, oh my God, the kids are in school. She's got to get the kids to school. She's got to get the big kid food and medicine and all this, man. She's been awesome. But I'm doing good. I putted in the backyard for 5 minutes the other day and, just to be out, and it's kind of good.
So I want to go back. I think it was Saturday, last Saturday, game 5, I guess it was. I'm in this enormous boardroom at TSN near the That's Hockey area, right? And big enough that only 3 of us can be in there. So it was myself, it was James Duthie, and Dave Poulin. And I mean, how many days? So you're what, a day and a half removed?
Yeah.
From surgery at that point?
Again, surgery last Thursday.
Yeah, knee replacement here. It's not like they were fixing ligaments and all. Anyway, you send me the video of you taking your first stroll. And now, when did you do that? Was that Friday or was that Saturday morning?
That was Saturday morning.
I mean, I was blown away. I was sitting there looking at this because, of course, you're limping and you're walking very gingerly. But the fact that you're upright without, crutches or any sort of apparatus, and you walk across your basement or wherever you were, and then you walk back. I mean, that speaks to everything you just said about modern medicine and the incredible, miraculous behavior and response of the human body, because I was mesmerized.
I said to Cammie, I think I can do this without my crutches. She's like, well, what are you doing? And so I said, well, I just want to try. Yeah. And so I walked, as you said, maybe 15 feet each way or whatever, but it's really pretty amazing. The other thing that I have noticed, do you know how much food you can spill when you're trying to eat lying down? My bed looks like remember when you had a picnic, right? And when you had the kids were little, and just before you leave, you grab the blanket and go shake it all out. That's what my bed looks like. It's gross, man.
So if I'm Cammie, and this goes back to Cammie being on the podcast months ago, I'm ordering pizza every night for Riley and Reese and the boys. And I'm stacking the empty boxes in the corner near your bed, just out of reach, so you can't get them to try and clean and recycle.
She's way too kind for that. That would be like torture, like somebody poking my foot to see that stuff there. The boys have been pretty awesome too. They're like,
sure.
Except when they're playing a video game, and they're like, I'm like, hey guys, can you get me a glass of water? And one of them, yeah, I'm almost out of the round. No.
Well, speaking of torture, and we'll get back to hockey here in a moment. News politically, of course, that President Trump and the First Lady of
wait a minute. Hey, hang on.
Hey, shut up. Shut up. You shut up.
I'm talking to you. That was the most. I watched 20 minutes. I don't know how long you got of the debate. I got 20 minutes, and I'm like, this. I think the guy was Jake Tapper that called it a dumpster fire inside a train wreck. Like, I don't know. It was
exactly. Well, so I've been around you a long time, and I've been in multiple conversations. And one of the first things that I learned about you was when you're talking, you want to finish what you're going to say. And it doesn't matter if you're analyzing or if we're just in casual conversation. You have something to say. You've listened to me. You've listened to those around you at the table, whatever, and you want to finish your thought. And I've been in situations with you, and I won't name names of those individuals who just automatically are like, yeah, but remember, okay, well, let me finish. And then you restart and you just get going. You're about to finish. Yeah, hold on, Ray, but you, and you're like, would you stop? Would you just let me finish? That's what I'm thinking of when I'm watching Biden and Trump in that debacle of a debate. I was thinking of you.
Well, okay, so the debate ends and people instantly are ripping the moderator.
Yeah, Chris Wallace.
Whether Chris Wallace is good, bad, or otherwise, who the hell cares? Like, okay, so don't let him moderate anymore. There you go. You fixed the problem. But I wanted him to just stand up, like from his desk, and like slap his hand on the desk and go, hey, you two, zip it. He's talking. When he finishes, you talk. But it never happened. And now that, Trump has acquired the virus, or whatever the term is, the next debate is scheduled for a few days. That won't be on, I assume, and which will give us all a break from that nonsense. And it's just like the ball rolls. Like, it's not like this, whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else, it's not like you just don't get it because you either you're in the wrong spot or you don't take the right precautions, whatever it might be. And it's still a pretty crappy thing, man.
Speaking of crappy things, and a perfect segue, by the way, from Trump and his First Lady testing positive. I reported this on Insider Trading. I don't know to what lengths the National Hockey League went to discipline the Tampa Bay Lightning. Probably not more than a phone call to say, hey, Mr. Vinik, Julian Breezeball, general manager, please tell your players and all around this organization to be better publicly. Now, normally, and I think back to Ovechkin splashing around in water fountains after the Capitals won the Stanley Cup, and we were amused by it because, look, it's age-old players drinking out of the Stanley Cup and the crazy things that they do with the Stanley Cup in celebration of winning the Stanley Cup. I understand all of that. And in fact, it was kind of nice to see that level of personality from Ovechkin and the craziness that went into it. But that was then, and this is now, and now is completely different because, we're being buckled by a global pandemic. And you've seen the videos. The National Hockey League saw the videos and called the Lightning to say, what is going on here? And it's not the drunkenness and the childish behavior that's captured on video. It's probably more of just the disrespect for social distancing and all the things that we all have to do society-based, to try and curb the virus. And none of that seemed to be of concern to any of the Tampa Bay Lightning players. And maybe that's just because they were so happy to get out of that damn bubble that nothing else seems to matter.
Well, I'm sure that's it. But I was watching that and I'm like, man, you guys just were in this thing for 100 days. Your families were away from you from this time. So if you're going to have a giant party and it's with the families of your team, and that's where you feel you can expand your risk, that's up to you, right? If you want to do that, fine. To bring in random people
Yeah.
Clearly have not been in a bubble. How could they be? And now, like, this is where I don't think people ever think in this spot. Like, okay, so not only now are you exposed to it, but now your family's exposed to it. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I was disappointed to see it. I hear these stories of what guys have done with the cup and do with the cup, and I'm envious, and I think it's awesome. I really do. I'm like, man, that is some of the nonsense that goes on with the cup is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I would never begrudge anybody of it. This is different, and it shouldn't have been like that.
All right. Well, we'll dive more into the headlines coming up on the Ray and Dregs podcast in a few minutes here, and we will have to discuss the Tampa Bay Lightning now that they've won the Stanley Cup championship. Reality sets in from a business platform, right? Because of all the work that Julien BriseBois is going to have to do. But we'll get into that in headlines. Your thoughts on the Stanley Cup? Your thoughts on Tampa Bay winning on Game 6? I mean, the Dallas Stars looked like they'd had enough going into Game 6. And I was a bit surprised by that. But they looked in Game 6 like they were out of gas. How did it look to you?
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised, Dregs, because that looked like a team that had given the maximum of everything that they had throughout the playoffs. And eventually you look down at your legs and you're like, come on, legs, let's go. And they don't answer you. There's just nothing there. And that's kind of what it looked like to Dallas, or from Dallas's perspective. It didn't look like a team that was uninterested. It didn't look like a team that didn't want to try to win these next two games. It looked like a team that just, they were done. And don't forget, they played that last game without 5 guys.
Yeah.
Like a quarter of their roster wasn't even available to them.
I know.
Like the thing that, like, it's hard and will always be hard for those guys to realize and to be proud of what they did, but they should be. Because as they think of it, they'll think of, damn, we're 2 games away, man. Like, you likely will not get back to that place again.
Yeah.
Certainly the same group won't, because there'll be changes and all that stuff. But as far as Tampa winning, the best team won. The team that was built the best, that addressed the needs that they had to address, that had performances from the top end of their roster, plus depth performances. Yeah. They had it all. They were the best team. They deserved to win. And for anyone that might think, oh yeah, now see, they've got to go ahead and they've got to blow up part of this team. Yeah, so what? Because there is a window for every team, and the GM and the management, they have to have the courage to say, yeah, we got to go for it now. I thought trading a first-round pick for Barclay Goodrow was too much.
Me too.
I thought trading a first-round pick for Blake Coleman was borderline too much. Except they both contributed mightily to a Stanley Cup. And so you're like, that was the right move. Now it's going to cost them those collateral of the first-round picks. And whether they won or not this year, they were still going to have to dump $10 million in salary.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're going to, they're stuck by the no movement clauses that they have, but they're going to have to go to Tyler Johnson and Yanni Gourde, Alex Killorn in particular. Like, those 3, I think one, maybe 2 of those guys are going to have to try to convince to move along. Killorn doesn't have a full no move like the others.
No, modified,
But damn, Dregs, it's not going to be easy. And so Julien BriseBois, he's watching as they are winning, and guaranteed, he's like, yeah, and half a dozen guys here or 4 guys here are not coming back.
Yeah.
Like, he already knows it.
Well, and the pieces that he's going to have to deal with, to your point, I mean, it's not just about shedding the money, but you look at the restricted free agents, Sergachev is not going to be cheap. Cirelli is not going to be cheap, right? I mean, these are key pieces.
And the real pressure becomes, what if somebody drops
an offer sheet?
Like, honestly, I know it doesn't get done very much. And Mark Bergevin timidly made an offer sheet last year to Sebastian Aho.
Yeah.
But if you look at Tampa Bay, I don't understand why teams don't do it. I would understand why they wouldn't do it this year because maybe they don't have the cap room. But I would think about offer sheeting both Sergachev and Cirelli. And if Tampa Bay can't match, well, bad break for them.
Yeah.
Like, what do you care if they're a bunch of good guys? Who cares? If I've got a chance and I've got cap room and I don't have to blow out players off my roster, it's all draft picks. Cirelli, and like Cirelli's just a winner. He's a good player. I don't think he's ever going to be a big scorer,
Right.
but he's going to score on a consistent basis, and he's going to check and he'll be a middle six guy for a long time. And Sergachev's a top pair guy.
And I guess the point is, I get that maybe you don't want to take advantage of a situation in a pandemic, but why not? Why not? Everybody's playing in the same environment. You? Exactly.
This is not, hey, let's see how we can be a bunch of great guys here. I've got a team. My job relies on my team getting better. And I have a spot here.
Yeah.
Now, that's why Brisebois, I don't think, has much option but to move as quick as he can here to try and move some of these contracts. Now, I don't know the dates, Dregs, because everything's up in the air. Maybe you have it, but they can be 10% over the cap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Until a certain date prior to, I don't even know.
Yeah, I do. I believe it's prior to the start of the regular season. Within a day or two window, whatever it is. Yeah, might be puck drop. In fact.
So if two different teams offer sheet Cirelli and Sergachev, Tampa can match them both.
Yeah,
and then subtract from that the money they're going to have to dive away from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what we've been told is that we're probably going to be surprised by the moves that they make. Surprised by the players. Thought they're going to move out. I don't know how you could possibly be surprised. Again, earlier you identified the most likely, right? I can't imagine it can't be Nikita Kucherov. His no trade, no move hasn't kicked in yet, but they're not trading him, even though he's a $9.5 million hit. I can't imagine.
It's not Braden
Point. I can't.
No. It's not Braden Point.
And then that takes you to Stamkos. Again, has full no trade protection, so he's going to manage if it gets to that place. And the reason people are willing to take it to that place is because, and it was a fun storybook moment, and part of the story and future and history of the Tampa Bay Lightning that he played 2 minutes and 47 seconds, scored a goal, and it was just a terrific part of the series, but he didn't play the series. He didn't play in the playoffs for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they still won the Stanley Cup. So you could envision life in Tampa Bay without Stamkos.
Okay.
So I think that's why people get there.
Okay, so people get there. Now you're another team.
Right.
Are you making a deal for Steven Stamkos? And
I mean,
you could ask me, and the answer would be no. And it's got nothing to do with his abilities. It would have to do with his health. And the fact, I believe he's got 7 years left on that contract.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 63 to 6.
I think he's got 4.
Is there only 4 left?
Yeah.
So you're $33 million roughly on that contract left.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, a reminder to check out our YouTube channel. And Ray is looking spicy today. And was that green? Is it blue?
It's blue. Shocker. It's blue.
Yeah. Well, it's different because normally
it's a different blue. Yeah.
But don't you normally wear like a dark blue, which looks black?
That's why I'm changing it up.
Okay. Well.
Oh, hey, I see you've got your Titleist hat on.
I do, and it's the new Titleist hat that goes with the Titleist TSI driver, which I was fitted for last Friday at the National Titleist Fitting Center at Eagle's Nest in Maple.
And what was the early indications?
like spectacular, but I can't say anymore because I think the launch is somewhere in the next week or so. And anyway,
okay. Okay, then I've only got one more Titleist question for you.
Okay.
What is the size of that hat?
Well, it's a snapback.
Oh,
I don't have a very big head, if that's what you're implying.
Okay. Yeah, no. I kind of.
I have gray hair when I don't have my product in, though, huh?
See, the thing about I'm checking that out on you because I got a sneaky big head.
Do you?
Yeah.
Kind of long. Right?
Yeah, it's like in the back here. It kind of like it stretches out there. And so I go get a hat, and I'm like, man, they're sizing the thing over a garbage pail. And I'm like, they always hand me like a small medium. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
So did you like a loose helmet, or was it so tight that you would have like the bar like almost tattooed, embedded in your forehead at the end of the game when you took your helmet off?
I liked it to be a little tighter, but this is how stupid I was. You get a scalpel and cut out the foam on the front, but so there was more room here, but I could have a tighter helmet. Like, how stupid is that?
Lots of room, no protection.
No, I mean, I don't know. Like at the time, it was like, oh yeah, it's comfortable. Look, isn't it? Look, and I wore the old Cooper. I mean, that thing looked like an indoor football stadium.
So correct. So I'm trying to remember this. So you would have cut that foam out and had the visor, right?
Yeah.
So you protected your eyes, which good on you, but we're less worried about your forehead.
honestly, Dregs, I'm going to say this, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm going to say I don't remember anybody having a conversation about the integrity of the helmet.
No.
I don't even remember changing it, other than I was in a slump and I thought I should change a helmet. Like, how stupid is that?
Well, this has gone sideways off of you asking me about the size of my melon because I'm wearing a Titleist hat, which, by the way, nobody's going to understand or appreciate unless they subscribe and check us out on YouTube, right?
They should.
And so is this a Cami request? Because now you're blurring out everything behind you.
No,
you don't want to know what's going on back there? You don't want the world
there's nothing there. There's nothing there. If I knew how to change it again, I would. I think I could do that.
Don't worry about it. I don't like it.
It happened. Like it came up on the thing, and I'm like, I kind of like this blurring thing. I was going to put like some science stuff behind me, but I'm like, nobody will buy that.
See, what it tells me is that you feel like you're the most important aspect of your surroundings. Nobody should have to be worried about what's going on behind me. I want them to focus on this. That's what I want.
No, that's not it. There's two bare walls behind me. There's nothing there.
All right. Okay. Well, anyway, check out Ray and Dregs on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, please. You won't be disappointed. Just an example of the conversations that we have week to week here on the podcast. Want to thank everyone who have entered our contest at rayanddregs.com for a chance to win a set of our custom Ray and Dregs lockers and mini sticks made by our friends, of course, at Tim Hortons. The response has been tremendous, especially to Ray's locker box. Mine, not so much, but I like it. We'll be announcing our two grand prize winners very, very soon. Ray, we've got to dive into headlines.
Yep, let's get on it.
As always, brought to you by our friends at Boston Pizza. BP Kids cards are back now for a limited time. When you make a $5 donation, you get 5 free kids meals. All the proceeds, this is very important, going to Boston Pizza Foundation's Future Prospects, helping Canadian kids get more time with role models. Kids cards only available for a limited time and only available at Boston Pizza. Lots to get through, specific to kind of what we were just talking about with Tampa Bay, but just news around the National Hockey League. And then we will end the headlines by selecting our Dewar playoff performers. And I think Dewar's going to hang on with us. We'll find another nifty little vehicle, a device inside this podcast to keep them on board. But obviously, this will be our last crack at the doer playoff performers for a while. I've got a twist in mind, which I don't think you're going to like, because I'm sort of taking an easy way out, but I'll explain that coming up. So you're not far from Vancouver. You're plugged into the Vancouver Canucks. You do a lot of radio in Vancouver and around North America where you talk about the Vancouver Canucks. Reported the last couple of days, and we drilled down on it in insider trading yesterday. All over Ekman-Larsson of the Arizona Coyotes is okay with being traded, has full no-trade protection. Tells Bill Armstrong and the Coyotes, I'll go to one of two teams. You can make a deal with Boston, or you can make a deal with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, problematic from Armstrong's perspective, because it certainly narrows the playing field, and both those teams have huge cap implications. Should Vancouver make this work? And if so, how?
Well, okay. I like everybody, I think, that watches as much Arizona Coyote hockey as you can, which is, they're not at the top of my watch list. But Ekman-Larsson's game certainly hasn't had the impact it had a few years ago. And there's probably lots of reasons for it. I mean, after a while, living in the turmoil that has been around that team has probably taken a toll on you. He's become the captain, which I don't think is the best spot for him. It doesn't seem like his personality would be welcoming to that. You do the best with it that you can, but it's a lot different. I still think he's a really good player, though.
Yeah,
I do. I like him a lot. What I don't see is how they make it fit in their cap world, because they're a year away from both Hughes and Pettersson extensions, which are going to be gigantic. By signing Ekman-Larsson, I assume part of the deal will be they'll want to offload a salary. Probably Brandon Sutter, who would be the most useful of the players that they could offload. He's at a 4.5 hit. So that means in net, you're bringing in about 3.7 onto the cap. That probably means you can't do Chris Tanev because they want to sign Tyler Toffoli. Probably means you can't do Jacob Markstrom. So the whole balance for Jim Benning is, if I bring in Ekman-Larsson, what do I have to offload? Not just in the trade, but in general.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little iffy on an $8.25 million defenseman for Vancouver. I would look hard to see if I could make it work, but without sitting with a whiteboard and trying to put all the numbers together, because you have to say you get Ekman-Larsson and you've got Hughes, you still have to have 5 other guys on the blue line. You've got Alex Edler. He's much older, but you've still got him. You've got Troy Stetcher. That would probably mean you keep him. And then all of a sudden, are you just with a couple of kids?
Yeah.
And good enough? And you can say, yeah, that's a decent 6. However, what if somebody gets hurt, which they will?
Yeah.
You've got to have cap room to be able to fill in around. Yeah. And I know we're a year away. Part of this might be as well, can you get someone like Ottawa to take Louis Eriksson? Because that offloads another $6 million. But by the time this is all done, Jim Benning's going to have no draft picks or no prospects.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have the contracts and the money you've got to send away.
Yeah.
He really wants.
Well,
get people to take it.
And I can tell you from a couple of teams who shared this with me, and now this was prior to the OEL camp being specific to Boston and Vancouver. But I was told that Armstrong and the Coyotes wanted a first and a second. That would be to recoup the draft picks that they've had to forfeit through the shenanigans of fitness testing draft eligible players. They want prospects and a young roster player. So there's 4 or 5 elements to that. And at the point of these discussions earlier, they didn't want to retain any money or have any contracts come back. Well, you have no choice in that process now. if you're trading Ekman-Larsson and he's going to Vancouver or he's going to Boston, those teams are going to have to move money back the other way. There's just no way around it. I just don't. I'm an Ekman-Larsson fan like you. I think Edmonton was to some degree disappointed that he chose not to include them. But I think even Edmonton had modest interest only because of the cap hit. Their interest would have been at 7.5 for Ekman-Larsson, 7.25, not 8.25. So there had to be a money transfer there to make it work. Anyway, it's
Dregs, here's the one thing about that just kind of triggered me is teams have done themselves a disservice by handing out full no moves as often and as frequently as they have. They give themselves no outs.
Yeah.
And when you have no outs, you make shitty decisions.
Yeah.
And so, it's not Bill Armstrong's problem. Well, it is Bill Armstrong's problem, but not of his creation. And so they've got to work around this. Now, I've never understood why, outside of very few players, like the Crosbys and McDavids of the world, why you can't say to a team or to a player, I need 7 teams that I can move you to after year 2 of the contract or year 3. And if they don't agree, well, then you're stuck and you have to make another decision. But they've let the cat out of the bag. Somehow they've got to jam it back in. Or you get a player telling you, I'll go to 1 of 2 places. And Don Sweeney and Jim Benning are like, really?
Yeah.
You can ask me for whatever you want. I know you've only got one other place to go.
Exactly right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. If you're Boston, is Ekman-Larsson that much better than Torrey Krug? Like, why wouldn't you circle back? He is, eh? Because I was going to say, why wouldn't you circle back to a player who's been good in Boston, who what it's going to take to get him to sign in Boston, and it's not 6 years, almost $40 million. It's got to be more than that. So you're saying, no, if I can add Ekman-Larsson and there's a way to do it, I would do that rather than circle back on Torrey Krug, somebody I know and I know can fit.
And the reason being, look, Torrey Krug plays his ass off. He competes hard. He can run that power play. That power play has been one of the league's best for a few years, and Krug's been at the top of it and runs it well. However, he's always going to be 5'9". And so
fair.
You can't play him against the other team's top players. And they don't. In Boston, I won't say they shield him, but they're smart in who they let him compete against.
Mm-hmm.
You're acquiring Ekman-Larsson, and in my mind, you're playing him with Charlie McAvoy. And that's your top pair.
Yeah. And
so, you re-sign Krug, you can't do that. You still need a partner for McAvoy because Chara can't play those minutes anymore. Mm. If they're going to bring him back, he can't play those minutes anymore.
All right. As we record the podcast here, it is Friday, October 2nd. There's lots of trade speculation. We're not going to get bogged down in it just yet. We'll let these stories develop. And as I said, in introducing the podcast, episode 43, there'll be an episode 44 and 45, and we'll look back on what we know happened. The name's Patrick Laine, not new. We've talked about him before. Josh Anderson of the Columbus Blue Jackets, how's that negotiation going? If he hits the trade market, there's going to be a frenzy there. So we'll keep close watch on all those developing stories, and we'll revisit what did happen in episode 44. What we know happened earlier this week with the New York Rangers. And again, we had speculated that it was likely to happen only because the New York Rangers really didn't have an option. They came out earlier, said, look, we're going with 2 goaltenders. It's Georgiev and Shesterkin. And that meant that Henrik Lundqvist, they were either going to find a trade fit or he would retire or inevitably they'd buy him out. They ended up buying him out this week. We knew it was coming, but this is still one of those tough ones, isn't it, Ray? Because Hank is legendary, not just in New York, for everything that he brought to the New York Rangers, just how he went about his business on and off the ice, all of that, but around the National Hockey League, because he's such a likable character. And even though he's on the 18th tee, way beyond back nine, he still has that fire burning in his belly, and he wants to compete. So this would have been a tough one for John Davidson, Jeff Gorton, David Quinn, ownership of the New York Rangers to have to cut bait on Henrik Lundqvist.
I'm sure they would have loved to do it anyway, but this. Yet they're in a position where, you don't really, again, have many options. I guess their other option would have been to trade Georgiev and keep Lundqvist as the backup, because they're going to have a goal protection problem going into Seattle's expansion draft. Like, that's going to be an issue for them anyway. But they obviously didn't want to go that way. They make this decision, and I mean, Lundqvist in the Rangers, Lundqvist in New York it was a perfect fit.
Yeah.
You've got someone with style and class and flair, and he looks like he does, the guy looks like $1 million in his gear or out of his gear in a suit, and he's the face of the franchise, and it was all perfect. It was all perfect. And he, the years that they went to the Stanley Cup final, I mean, he was fantastic in those finals, in those playoff runs. And, I've read some stuff. There's just no loyalty in sports. And I think maybe it's somewhat true, but in this case, they paid him $99 million.
Yeah.
Like, there is a harsh reality to sport. And the reality is father time wins every time. Age wins all the time. It's undefeated.
Yeah.
And eventually you can't perform to the way that you want to play. And I look at Lundqvist and I think of, the way he battles, the way that he fights in the net, how proud he was to wear the Ranger jersey. And this is the last way that anybody would want it to finish. However, this is where they're at. And I'm curious because, apparently he hasn't made a decision on next year yet. But what if you could sign him at $2 million?
Yeah.
Would you want him in one of your tandem goalies?
Yeah.
I think I would.
There's lots of interest in him. That I know.
He would look funny in another jersey.
He really, really would. He has to come to terms with that too, right? Of course, there's going to be interest for all the things that you've just said, but there's a big difference when all of a sudden you've got to pack your family and you've got to move. And, so what's your willingness to do that? Are you going to try and stay in the greater New York area? I don't know. I've got a weird idea in my head. Braden Holtby's not likely going back to the Washington Capitals. Mm-hmm. Like, could he be a fit there for 1 year? For 1 year,
sure. Why not?
Some mentoring.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, for 1 year, that opens the door in a lot of places.
It does, yeah.
If it's Washington, his family doesn't really have to move. They can jump on the train, and zip down if need be. But man, it'll be a big decision. I'll tell you, if I were a team talking to him right now, he would have one of my team's jerseys in his house. I'm not even kidding. And I'd say, put it on. Look at yourself in this. Can you see yourself doing this? Because we can.
Yeah.
Because there will be a jersey he'll put on and go, nope. Just doesn't look right. Doesn't feel right. My skin's not right. And then I'm sure there's one that he'll go, I can do this.
Yeah.
But if I were one of those teams, he'd already have a home and away jersey in his house.
And I would have my superstars just carpet bombing him, texting him, calling him like, come on, man, it's going to be a great ride. Just come on board. We've got an opportunity here to win a Stanley Cup.
Here's another thing, Dregs. I just thought of is next year's not 82 games.
No, probably not.
So what if you have Henrik Lundqvist and say the season's 50 to 60 games? And what if you need 20 from him? Yeah, he can play you 20 games. You bet he can.
Sure he can. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. In the right environment, he's got lots of jam and compete left in him. And, the Rangers.
The cost is going to be super attractive as well. Like, here's the thing, I think, and I don't know if we're getting into it or we'll wait for next week, but man, these guys that are free agents, they better be nimble and they better be ready for, you might get, here's your offer. Don't be piddling around with it. You're going to take it or not because we're going to the next guy.
It's an excellent point. And the way it's going to be managed for the most part is these players will be on Zoom calls, right?
Okay.
You can't be in multiple places, I guess if you're a US-based agent or whatever, you could set up shop there and whoever wants to come in from the US can come in from the US and you go about it that way. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It will be, as the general manager described, starter's pistol sort of activity on Friday because everybody's starting from the same point. And we'll wrap up headlines with this. I'm wondering about Petrangelo. And I'm wondering, we assume that Doug Armstrong and the Blues are going to circle back at some point in the week ahead. I don't know that Newport Sports and Alex Petrangelo share that assumption because only they know what the construction of the contract offers to date from St. Louis have been all about. And what we've learned in this process is it's important to Petro to get the structure right, the signing bonus money and the back end money to offset whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if St. Louis isn't going to do that, then maybe that's all the evidence they need to know that he's going to free agency. So we can't really answer those questions because we don't know at this stage. Toronto has been widely speculated that because he's an Ontario kid, he's going to want to sign with the Leafs. Maybe. Like, I think Toronto is in his top three. I think that's the most. Don't lose your train of thought.
I think that's the most overblown thing in the history of free agents.
Yeah.
Hey, so and so is from Chicago. He'll want to sign there. Why? If he wants to live there, he can buy a house to live there. But
for sure.
But that might not be the best fit for any number of reasons. But I would think Toronto would be a team he'd want to look at for sure.
Yeah, and look, this is logistical, but as a dad, you can appreciate this. I think that COVID-19 influences his decision, and not just because of the threat of the virus. I mean, he lives in the United States, and the threat is worse there to some degree than it is here north of the border. But he just had, I believe, a baby girl, right? So he's got an infant child. His wife is from St. Louis. So
they have triplets.
Yeah. So if the family is committed to leaving because they've closed the door on St. Louis, fine. But now you're going to want to cross the border and go back and forth, and the quarantine, and is the border open? And I know this could be a short-term thing. Like maybe you only have to deal with it for the next year or less, hopefully less in a healthier, but you still have to deal with it. And if you have other options like Vegas, who, in my opinion, I think Vegas is where Petrangelo ends up. I don't know how they do it, but I think that's where he ends up. Are you not going that way?
They've been jamming 3 pounds of sand in a 2-pound bucket in Vegas. I'm so impressed. You're like, oh, they got another guy. How did they do that? And it's really, really impressive. You could see Vegas with a Petrangelo. That'd be a really good team.
Well, I like it.
But you know what? He's the only one that knows, right? Like
that's right.
All these factors we can all speculate on, and again, like I said about Lundqvist with the jersey, some of them are just going to seem right, and some of them will be like, you know what? I don't think so.
Yeah,
because he's going to have a lot to think about.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun week, and leading into Friday, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, we haven't touched on Taylor Hall. I feel like we're going to be talking a lot about this in episode 44. So those are your headlines, brought to you by Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza, thank you. It's time, Ray, for our final players with a doer playoff performance of the past week. I'm going to go first because you're not going to like it. I'm taking Joe Pavelski, Corey Perry, and Braden Point.
You can't do that.
Why?
It's not the players of the week.
No, I changed it. It's the doer players playoff performance of the week.
You can't change the rules.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. In that case, I'm going to go with Joe Pavelski just because, in terms of the graybeards, and he and Corey Perry, well documented. The only reason, frankly, obviously, that series goes 6 games against the Tampa Bay Lightning, because as Ken Hitchcock said to me just prior to the start of this series, and Hitch, man, he's always that philosophical, like, the team that wins is the team that's going to be able to balance will and skill. We know Tampa Bay has the skill, but have they fought through enough adversity over time to balance the skill with the will? And so he was projecting Dallas prior to the start of the series. And that was his point, was because the veteran leadership of Joe Pavelski, Corey Perry, the Dallas Stars ultimately would prevail. And Pavelski did everything humanly possible to will the Dallas Stars to Game 6 and 2 Game 7 if they'd have got there, and maybe a Stanley Cup championship. So not just the numbers, because you tell me, has there been another player in the Stanley Cup playoffs who has got less attention or fanfare and scored as many goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs as Joe Pavelski did?
He's always like the second level of talked about.
Right.
In San Jose, it was always Joe Thornton and then Brent Burns and Couture had some really noteworthy playoffs. And then you're like, yeah, damn, Joe Pavelski's good. He's not fast. He's not big. Doesn't have like a howitzer of a shot. He is just really a great player. Had a great career.
And sir, your doer playoff performer of the week is?
I'm going to go way off the board, and I'm going to go to Braden Point. Because it seemed like whenever Point was healthy and in the lineup, they won.
Yeah.
Like they needed a big goal, he's around it. Whether it's a goal, the assist, the kid is just really, really impressive to watch. And it's funny in the Conn Smythe thing for me, it had to be Hedman, and then I'm like, I can't believe it has to be Hedman.
Right.
And that leaves Point and then Kucherov way behind.
Yeah.
But for me, Braden Point.
Yeah. There's just nothing not to like about Braden Point. His approach to the game, his tenacity, his vision, the skill set, the speed that John Cooper talked about later in the playoffs, but, and he corrected himself and he said he came out of Moose Jaw and, his skating was an area that we needed to work on. And then he corrected himself by saying it's not that he was a bad skater, because he wasn't, but, it's just an area that to get to the level he's at now, he had to work on. Almost every player in the National Hockey League goes through that, Austin Matthews included. So the whole package of Braden Point is terrific, but then you have to put the business side back into play, and you wonder what his deal is going to look like in a couple of years. And deservedly so, it's going to be mammoth. It's going to be mammoth.
Just think, I have this vision in every manager's office. They've got that big, gigantic dry erase board behind them. And, and all the contracts are projected out for their years. And there's some teams that are looking down the road and they must be thinking, I'm not thinking of that today.
No.
Like Julien Brisebois got all kinds of issues right now to try and sort out, but just hanging in the clouds as you're not far away from Point.
Well, and look, we talked a little bit about the opportunity of offer sheets, and we're looking at Cirelli, we're looking at Sergachev. Where I lost my steam on offer sheets was a year ago. Nobody offer sheets Braden Point.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Mark Bergevin softly offer sheets Sebastian Aho.
Yeah.
No one offer sheets Mitch Marner. So, I mean, with that collection of talent and what we've seen in Braden Point, I guess if you could rewind, you'd do it differently if you were a rival NHL club. But
why? But okay, if you rewind, why would they have needed to rewind? There wasn't a guess on any of those guys.
I know. Anyway, so it kind of, anytime I bring up or somebody brings up offer sheets, I think to that and I'm like, nah.
Yeah, whatever.
Believe it when I see it. There are your Doer playoff performers of the week. So thank you to Doer Jeans. We'd encourage you to check out that super stretchy fabric, temperature control, Ray, all the things that you love in a nice pair of jeans or shorts too, by the way. We always talk about the jeans. We don't talk about the shorts.
No, I think we only have talked about the jeans.
Are you a shorts guy 12 months of the year? Because I am. You're not.
Dregs, you've been to Vancouver.
No. But I'm not saying leaving the house. I wouldn't. No, I mean, in Toronto in the middle of January, I'm not wearing shorts outside. I'm always in shorts in my house until I'm going outside.
Okay, so hang on. You come in.
Yeah.
You're wearing your Doer jeans. You come in.
Yeah.
And you change.
Yeah.
No, I don't change.
Well, hold on.
I'm wearing jeans. It's December. I'm wearing jeans. Then the first time I change out of when I come in the house is when I change into my BJs.
Your tidy whities and you're prancing around the house?
No. Where'd you get that? I have like black and red check thingies.
Yes, we've seen them on the podcast before.
Yes, you'll see them again. I'm actually due for a new pair. I'm hoping for them for Christmas this year.
Yeah. So you call them checkered pants, right? Your PJs.
My PJs, yeah.
So we my friend group here in Brooklyn, Ontario, we call them soft pants because they're soft pants. Yeah. So your Doer jeans or your hard pants, although that's what makes Doer unique, is again that super stretchy fabric. But then you go to the soft pants, which are your PJs. And so Super Bowl weekend in healthier times, we go up to a buddy's cottage, 3 Mile Lake in Muskoka. And there's like...
How far is it from Muskoka?
It's in Muskoka.
But it's 3 miles away, right?
Yeah, no, it's a 3 Mile Lake. It's 3 miles in length. I don't even know if it's 3 miles long. It's called 3 Mile Lake. Anyway, good people there. And we always kid. So we usually get there like Thursday night. So Friday is a bit of a debacle. I usually have the smoker up and I've got something, big hunk of meat going for Friday. And then we actually have it catered on Sunday. But by Sunday morning, it's time for a change of the soft pants because we've been in the same soft pants since arriving on Thursday night. You don't need 6-8 grown men sitting around a TV in t-shirt and soft pants that haven't been changed for 2.5 days.
No, probably not. Probably not.
By the way, you're welcome to join us. Maybe not this year. Let's wait till things kind of correct, but open invitation.
2022. Yeah. Super Bowl 2022.
Yeah. How do you feel about tequila and shotgunning beers? You okay with that?
I used to be able to put in a decent shift. I don't really practice it, Well,
you've got time on your hands now with the new knee, so
just like I can tell Cammy, sorry, I'm busy tonight. I'm warming up for the Super Bowl.
I'm shotgunning 6 beers and doing 6 shots, Cammy. I don't know what you have planned. Anyway, thank you to Doer Jeans. You've been great to us all season long. You can get a discount from Doer Jeans, 15% off by using the code RAY. It is site-wide at doer.ca. Normally, we'd have an interview at this time on the podcast, but we had so much stuff going on. And truthfully, when we wrap up season 1 in the not-too-distant future, we'll get a big name to just kind of look back at the crazy year that it's been. So we're going to give that some thought. But it's more about getting to the news of the day here in episode 43. And as you know, Our interviews on the Ray and Dregs podcast are presented by our friends at coolbet.co. It's the free-to-play sports and casino games website. Sports are back all over the place. NFL, European soccer, they're all back. And along with that, all the free sports and casino games are back as well. Coolbet.co now has a daily betting odds and line report, and it covers all of the day's action that you can check out. You have to be 19 years old or older to play, and Coolbet reminds you, stay cool and always bet responsibly. Now we're going to drift right into Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. And normally I peruse the questions, but because I'm so busy with all the trade stuff happening and texting and taking calls, I haven't had a chance to do that. But every week on the podcast, we ask our listeners, our viewers, those who follow us on social media, to text us their questions on our social media channels. And we always present Ask Ray and Dregs by our friends at Sure Health from Green Shield Canada. You can visit them online at surehealth.ca or call 1-844-855-SURE. So question one, Ray, comes from Jared. Jared's asking, which NHL teams would you most want and least want to be the general manager of going into the draft and free agency? That's a loaded question, but an interesting one.
I would want to be the general manager of Montreal because they have cap space and picks. I would least want to be the general manager of Tampa.
Yeah.
Because of their obvious issues they're going to have with the cap, and they're going to spend more time offloading than trying to add. I can't imagine what being the GM of Arizona will look like right now. They're trying to shed cap. They're trying to get picks. It's a blender out there. And so I would say those would be the way I'd look at them right now.
No, that's an excellent point. Because you use Arizona, I would agree with you on Arizona, and I really wouldn't want to be Billy Armstrong and having to go through. I mean, he hasn't been through the rebuilds in Arizona, but it is another rebuild in Arizona, and it's going to be a tough one. I'm not so sure I'd want to be David Poile either in Nashville. And David has made it clear, outside of maybe a few players, you want one of our centermen? Make a call. You want to talk about Matt Duchene? I'll talk about Matt Duchene. You want to talk about this guy? Just make a call.
Yeah, the best part about that is they all make $8 million.
Tough contracts. Tough contracts. And no different than Billy Armstrong and wrestling with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. There's always a market for centers. There's always a market for top pairing, top three defense. So, they're interested parties, but executing is something different. So they would be difficult. I'd like to be Pierre Dorian. I would like to be Dorian. Yep. He's got 13 draft picks, and you noted this early in the podcast months ago, saying you can't sign 13 players, so you're not going to draft 13 players. And in fact, he already used one of his second-round picks.
Fourth, I think, right? Isn't it a fourth?
That's right. He had a couple of fourth-round picks. I think he has 4 seconds, and he, of course, has 3 firsts. Anyway, he's got a bevy of draft picks. Yeah. So he acquired a defenseman. You remember who it was from
Josh
Florida?
Brown. Josh Brown.
Josh Brown. So I again noted this on That's Hockey, but they need a center. They need a couple of wingers at least. They need a couple of defensemen. Well, they've got now one in Josh Brown. They need a goalie. So you've got all of these assets that you can peddle. I think it would be fun to go into the draft knowing that you got 3 first-round picks. So you're picking 3 and 5. You're getting 2 really good draft picks. Mm-hmm. And you can use the 28th pick to trade for something, right? So even though it's daunting because you're trying to make your NHL roster better, you've also got some real good developing players coming up from the American League out of Belleville, like kids that look like they're ready to play in the NHL. You've got your young guys in Brady Tkachuk and Shabbat and all those young players in the NHL who are probably going to be better. As long as, and this is a tall ask, as long as I've got some patience from my owner, Eugene Melnick, which is a tall ask, Ray. That's a tall ask.
It's a tall ask. And, what's our goal? Is our goal to get to
Yeah.
the floor plus $1? Or, I mean, that's going to really hamper a lot of what Pierre Dorion can do. But you're right. To sit there with that many picks, you can be as creative as your mind will allow.
And you know you have to get to the floor. So you've got to get to that floor, and you have the assets to make those decisions in a very constructive way, because wisely, and Pierre knows this, it's not Wednesday yet. Like, the restricted free agent deadline hasn't hit. There could be players that are going to be available either free, or a manager is going to panic at the last second before that deadline, and he's going to say, Pierre, I'll take one of your third round picks, but this is my restricted free agent. Are you interested? He's going to go, yes, I am. Give me the agent's number. Or he qualifies, and you go to arbitration and you deal with the aftermath. But I think he's in a wonderful position. So there you go. Question 2 from David. If you're Canucks management, we talked a little bit about the Canucks earlier, but if you're Jim Benning, what do you do with Jake Virtanen? And is there a fear of repeating the Cam Neely trade affecting the judgment of Benning and the Vancouver Canucks?
Cam Neely and Jake Virtanen are so far apart. I can't believe that these articles started to pop up. I'm like, just because they're both from the Vancouver area, Cam's from Delta, and Jake is from Abbotsford, 2 suburbs or surrounding communities of Vancouver, and they both shoot right-handed. Yeah. They're not the same.
They're not
the same. So I have no fear of repeating what that trade turned out to be. The biggest problem I have is I don't want to pay Jake Virtanen $3 million. He's got an arbitration case that is going to make that it could be made strong enough to put you in the $2.7 to $3 million range.
Yeah,
I don't want to pay him that much. I don't think he's a top 6 forward. I don't think he's ever going to be one outside of flashes here and there. I think he's a top 9 guy, but they don't have the room to pay a top 9 guy $3 million.
No, and Benning, because he has, we talked about some of the trade pieces. Of course, he's listening to trade interest in Jake Virtanen for exactly what you said. When I think of comps, I think of the McCann contract, which was 2 years at $295. Robbie Fabry's another one, but it's that same money. It's almost $3 million. So if you can't stomach
after a while, Dregs, the player almost becomes irrelevant, and you have to almost take the player's name away and say, okay, this is my third line right winger. I'm going to pay him $3 million. I can't make it fit. Doesn't matter who it is. And I think that's going to be part of the struggle the Canucks have in regards to Virtanen.
All right, last question. Ask Ray and Dregs anything from Bobby on Twitter. You think it's McKenzie? It just says Bobby. Do you think Bobby McKenzie is tweeting us?
No, I don't think so. I think he's still enjoying the cottage, doing the draft stuff, working away for the next 5 days, and then poof.
He pissed me off last week, by the way. Like,
really?
I love
Why?
Bob. Yeah, I mean, he's like the, I've got an older brother, but he's my older brother's older brother, which makes him my older brother. I mean, he's in semi-retirement.
Oh, you're talking about Jack Eichel.
And I mean, in fairness to Bob, he actually called me beforehand to give me the heads up. He said, look, here's what I'm going to roll out. Good. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. And just hammers it. He had like a series of Jack Eichel tweets. Like, Bob comes out of semi-retirement and steps up to the plate and just jacks one over the wall for the grand slam. Then goes back into semi-retirement. And,
why do I think at some point Bob read that on Twitter, his own tweet, and then had a glass of red, give it a little swirl.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I teased him. So when we do insider trading, we've got an insider trading, just a little group. And then normally it's a text chat or sometimes it's email. But Pierre LeBrun and Frank Cervalli and I are going back and forth yesterday, whenever it was, be it Thursday. And I submit, okay, here's what I'm doing. I'm doing Ekman-Larsson. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. LeBron submits his. Frank says what he says. Bob sends a cartoon video of, I don't know, was it Sylvester the cat? I remember.
Yeah.
So Sylvester is on his back on the couch with a blanket over his head, and I think he's missed trying to eat Tweety Bird for the 9,000th time. But there's a feather, and as he exhales, the feather just goes poof off the blanket, lands, and then there's another poof. And he goes, "This is what I'm submitting for insider trading." I laughed out loud.
That's a good one.
All right. So Bobby on Twitter, Ray, he says, you tweeted last week that nobody wins without balance from size, in parentheses, grit and skill. Nobody. Teams ignore it at their own peril. So his question is, why don't more teams work harder to achieve that balance when it's a known fact? Are some GMs that much better than the rest, or does a salary cap, free agency, all of that just make it incredibly tough to build a properly balanced team?
I've never had to build a team, but it's way harder than you think.
Yeah.
Like if we're talking about Team X needs to add a D, well, that GM knows they need to add a D. And the rest of the league knows they need to add a D. You can't invent the player to put them in there. So in a lot of cases, a manager they'll have players they don't necessarily love, but they're the ones that they have. They're the ones they were able to acquire these players. Maybe their draft picks didn't pan out quite as well as they thought. A trade that you make, look, you brought up David Poile earlier. He traded for Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson at a hefty cost in both of them.
Yeah.
Now, either of them are available. Well, those trades didn't work out. And so I think most people would understand. I'd be shocked if they didn't, that you have to have balance. And Tampa in the last year and a half has been the perfect example. Unreal regular season, get booted in the ass by Columbus. Everybody knows they've got to change the look of their team a little bit.
Yeah.
And so they go ahead and they add size and Maroon and Shen to a lesser degree, but then Bogosian and Coleman and Goudreau. So in the lineup, 5 of the 18 skaters they had, not counting Kevin Shattenkirk, because he's a different player, but 5 of the 18 skaters in the clinching game weren't there a year ago, and they're bigger and stronger. They went and got balance. And it's unavoidable. A team with balance will win every time.
All right. That pretty much does it, Ray, for episode 43 of the podcast. Now, our fearless leader here, Rob Gray, has reminded me that episode 44 will be our last of the season, our inaugural season of the Ray and Dregs podcast. And we're aiming to do that one on October 13th, which would recap the draft, free agency, the trading nonsense, all of that. What I would say to this is, and it's purely your health related, if there's a big trade, and I mean big, Patrick Laine gets dealt to wherever. I mean, I think we can probably sign up and do a quick one, right? We haven't done an emergency podcast in a while.
No, we could do that.
All right. Okay. So episode 44.
Okay, but hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. So what if there's 4 trades on 4 different days?
No. I feel like we've got to establish. Now, hold on. If Ekman-Larsson gets traded to the Vancouver Canucks.
Absolutely. That's one.
I think, not that we're a Canadian podcast only, because we're not. But you're covering off multiple markets there, because Boston would have been involved in the discussion of Ekman-Larsson. Why wasn't it a fit there? If Patrick Laine gets traded to an American market, which probably would be the case, I mean, we'll cover off that. So I feel like that needs to be the benchmark, right? Unless
it's got to touch several markets. Sure, I can be in favor of that.
Unless it's a 4th line player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then absolutely we have to do a podcast.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, buddy. Rehab? Are you fully into the? What's that?
We'll sign up for that. I'm into that.
I just trumped you. I cut you off. I apologize.
That's all right.
What's the rehab schedule look like between now and the 13th?
I do I've got 2 sets of exercises I do twice a day and at home. And then I start hands-on rehab on the 9th. Geez, 13th, eh? We're going to do one? We're going to have to worry about the time there. That just kind of jogs something here, Dregs. I'm going to have to take a look at this. I'm going to take a look at it while we're here.
Well, hold on. Wait
a minute. Ooh, boy. We'll have to do that. 13th, it'll have to be in the morning, though, because that afternoon I get the staples out of my leg, and I don't know how that feels.
Can you video it again for our YouTube channel? Like the actual removing?
Actually, I can see one of the staples, and like, damn, it's a legit staple, man.
Well, what do you think? They just called it a staple for the...
No, but I didn't know that it was like metal. And hang on. Just think of this. You know how a staple goes in.
Yeah, coming out, it's going to hurt.
No, but I'm thinking of how it went in. Thank goodness I was asleep.
How long was the surgery, by the way?
I don't know. I was asleep.
Yeah, well, they didn't tell you after the fact that you were under
I forgot to ask. I didn't care. The reason I didn't care was it hurt so bad. I didn't want to know anything.
I found a GIF or a meme. I never know what the difference is. Whatever. But it was this guy had his saw out and he was doing, board after board after board.
Yeah.
And I had the tweet all built with you tagged on it on Thursday morning. And I was going to say, hey, Ray, good luck with the knee replacement today with the buddy with the saw. And I'm like, I
got to tell you, and anyone that's had surgery would know this. You get wheeled into that operating room and everybody's doing their own thing and they're prepping their own way. And I took a look over to the right and I'm like, I'm not looking over there again. No. There was some drill bits and a drill and it was no good over there.
So, and we'll wrap up here momentarily, but I've had one semi-serious surgery on my nose because I couldn't breathe after having it broken a few times. And I remember going into the operating room and the anesthesiologist said to me, have you ever gone under before? And I'm like, no, I hadn't. And he goes, okay, well, you're going to feel this sense of cold over your upper body and it'll feel like it's pushing down and then you'll be out. Right. And you always get the count to 10 backwards or whatever. And you seldom make it to 3. Right. That still to this day, as I think back, freaks me out more than anything, was that sense, that cold sensation was jarring. Like, that's the last thing I can think of is how cold I felt, and then I was sleeping, and I don't remember anything.
Yeah, they told me I was getting an epidural in my low back and then the sleepy juice after.
Yeah.
And so I got the epidural. They'll say, little prick on the needle and you feel it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you're hugging a pillow. And then they said, think of something that you really like. So, of course, I think of a golf course. And I think of the golf course, and then I was in the recovery room. I don't know what the heck happened, man.
Wow.
It was like, bam. And there you go.
Well, good luck with having the staples removed.
Thanks, bud.
Good luck with the rehab. And I should actually wish Cammie good luck because it sounds like she's been saintly through this process to date.
She's been amazing. And so she really liked that I'm over in this room doing the podcast. That's been 90 minutes. I haven't asked for anything. So I think she's probably happy with that.
All right, buddy. Be well, and we look forward to episode 44 with you.
Thanks, Dregs. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to you right after free agency and the draft.
And a big shout out to all of our partners as we wrap up episode 43. We could not do this podcast without you. Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website. Thanks for being there all the way through. Boston Pizza. Kids cards are back. Make a $5 donation and get 5 free kids meals. Doer Performance Denim. Use code RAY for 15% off site-wide at doer.ca. SureHealth.ca. Call them at 1-844-855-SURE. Image Optometry. Visit image.ca, get new glasses, and pay online with your vision care benefits. And by Ligaro Jewelers. Hit Ligaro.com, raise your watch game, folks, and save up to 20% on select Tissot watches right now. And as mentioned, you can find the podcast, subscribe to it on YouTube. We're doing the video each week. So yes, we're asking, subscribe there. Thanks to Aaron the Tech Johnson for producing the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. And thank you to Tony Ferraro for providing the excellent music you hear each week. Look forward to episode 44. Lots of looking back on the 2020 draft, free agency, and all the wheeling and dealing. Be safe, everybody.